on to the third in the series of our Transform for Tomorrow and our Pitt Ed Justice Collective. We want to thank the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, the University of Pittsburgh, Remake Learning, the Grable Foundation, and everyone that has been a part of our sessions. It has been extraordinary, to say the least, and it would not have been possible without the generous support of the Grable Foundation. As Fred Rogers says, when you think that you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else. We hope that these 3 sessions are the impetus to start something new and to go deeper and to continue the learning. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Bart Rocco, who will then introduce Dr. Kinloch and Dr. Tyra Good.
Thank you, Dr. Rondinelli. And, Fred Rogers guides a lot of our work and what we've done the last year around our Transform for Tomorrow series. But one gentleman that's on that we want to just have a few welcoming words, and he can turn it back over to me, is Mr. Greg Barrett, the Executive Director of the Grable Foundation. Greg, again, your leadership and direction in this whole process have been amazing. So if you want to say a few words before we get started this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Rocco. Let me begin by saying thank you to Dr. Rondinelli, Dr. Kinloch, Dr. Good, and everyone that's participating today, and also the hundreds of you that are joining this conversation. We're all navigating multiple pandemics and endeavoring to do good. And the attention to justice learning is work that's been going on for decades, if not centuries. It is work to which we need to attend in the months and the years and the decades ahead. And we are so grateful that those who have organized today's panel are uplifting and elevating the voices of our young people who are at the forefront of this work together with the caring adults and allies in their classrooms and in all the places that they learn. And so I want to express on behalf of the Grable Foundation and also Remake Learning our deep gratitude that everyone's involved. And we look forward to a conversation of tough questions, hard comments, and genuine listening. So thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. And I will tell you, in our planning session with these folks that are going to be on board today, I will tell you, I am so excited to hear and see what Dr. Good and Dr. Kinloch will put together. But it is certainly, again, without the leadership of Dr. Kinloch, who's the Renée Richard Goldman Dean of the School of Education for the University of Pittsburgh, a friend, a colleague, and just a leader in the region and around the country. So Dr. Kinloch, I'd like to let you take over. You can introduce Dr. Good and get the program off. So again, Dr. Kinloch.
Sure, thank you. Thank you all for being here today. This is the third in our series in focusing on anti-racism, justice, and equity in education. And it just brings me so much pleasure to be at this point of focusing on these really important topics with a group of folks who are joining us today. When I thought about this justice listening and strategizing session, I thought of Tyra Good because of the work that she has done in the region, the work that she continues to do across the world in Haiti. And it's just a pleasure to have Dr. Good here with us today. She is a professor, an inaugural director of a new center, and in all honesty, I consider you, Dr. Good, to not just be my soror, but also to be a really good friend and a critical thinking partner. And so I want to turn it over to you to get us started and to introduce our panelists. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Kinloch. Just thank you, everyone, just for the welcome. Thank you for asking me to co-moderate this session with you. As I think about the work, as social justice work and the work that we do, a lot of us day to day, but in really working with the young people, I was just excited to join you in co-moderating this session. And so we have an awesome lineup of young people that are joining us today that's really going to share their thoughts and perspectives as they take on from the area that they are of looking at dismantling educational inequities. And so, Kevin, would you be able to advance the screen? And so I can introduce our panelists. Thank you. So in order of alphabetical order, first we have Jayden Armand. Jayden graduated this June from Pittsburgh Public Schools, and he is an incoming student at Howard University. He's going to be majoring in business. And so HU, that's my alma mater. And then we also have his sister, Lauren. So Lauren is a rising sophomore, and she attends Pittsburgh Science and Technology School, which most people refer to as SciTech. We have Jada Geis. Jada is a rising junior at Avenworth School District, and Jada is also one of the co-founders of Avenworth Social Justice Club. Next, we have Hannah Palmer. Hannah is a rising junior also at Avenworth School District and also a co-founder of the Social Justice Club. Next slide. So next we have Samara Pollard. Samara is another recent graduate this year. She graduated from West Mifflin High School. She is an incoming first-year student at Hampton University this fall. Samara has a particular interest in education law, so she wants to do work from the law perspective, but within dismantling and looking at the school to prison or the cradle to prison pipeline. And so when she does work and in regards to advocacy, she is really interested in educational law and policy. Then we have, I should say, the Cecil Price III. He is also a recent high school graduate from Pittsburgh, Obama, where he served as the student body president as well. And for Cecil, he is entering the Morehouse College, not only as entering freshman, but also he's joining the ranks as an Oprah Winfrey Scholar. So welcome, Cecil. And we have Macy. So Macy is a rising junior at Avenworth School District, and Macy is the third person who is a part of co-founding the Social Justice Club. And the next panelist, so these are our high school students that are representing us on the panel. And next we have our graduate students. So we have Terry Martin. So Terry Martin is a former graduate research assistant. She actually served as my graduate research assistant and teaching assistant at Chatham University, where she recently just graduated with her MAT in early childhood education. And then we have Davonna Shannon, and Davonna is a graduate research and teaching assistant at the University of Pittsburgh. She is actually the graduate assistant for Dr. Kinloch, and she works in the Center for Urban Education there. And so we just welcome you. This is our awesome list of panelists that we are here to engage with you and to just kind of frame just a little bit as we look at starting off this discussion. I want to read a quote from Bell Holtz. So Bell Holtz, in her book, Teaching to Transgress, I have it here. She talks about us being liberators. And so I wanted to read this. She says, "We greet you as liberators. This is we. It is that, us in the margins, that we who inhabit marginal spaces, that is not a site of domination, but a place of resistance. Enter in that space. This is the intervention. I am writing to you. I am speaking from a place in the margins where I am different, where I see things differently, and I'm talking about what I see." So as the panelists, as the co-moderators, we are entering into this space and we are greeting you, in the words of Bell Holtz, as liberators. And we're asking you to enter into this space with us, right? As we share our different stories from the margins of how we have done work to really organize and advocate for the work that we do. And so often, as we're speaking to school leaders and superintendents, there is the people who are involved in the decision making, but sometimes, usually what happens is that we don't hear the voices of the youth. And so we're asking you to enter into this space. And this session is titled Justice, Listening, and Strategizing. So enter into this space as we begin this conversation. Thank you.
So thank you for that, Dr. Good. And again, welcome to all of our panelists. And I really will say that when Dr. Good and I started thinking about this session, I think the last conversation we had was, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to listen. I'm going to try not to talk much. And she laughed at me, and she's laughing right now. But I am going to practice that. And I'm wondering, Dr. Good, if you can actually get us started with the first panelist and the question that we have. And it's going to be organic. We want to have a conversation. We want to learn with you. And I also just want to end by saying what Dr. Good just shared with us in terms of Bell Hooks and how we are liberators. You know, I think for me, the question throughout this session will be, how are we liberators and how are we engaging in this work of liberation through equitable and anti-racist practices? But I want that to be sort of the end point. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Good, to get the panel started.
Thank you for that. And so as we were planning and strategizing and coming up with just kind of the focus areas for discussion, we really went off of the background and expertise that all of the panelists bring. And so we looked at that and then also paralleled that to a lot of the injustices and inequities that we see in education system. And so I think one of the things that we see a lot is just of the discussion around Black and Brown students, and always usually coming from a deficit model or approach, or coming from an achievement gap or an opportunity gap that discusses students, especially Black and Brown students, in a way that is deficit or of lacking. And so one of the things I wanted to say in regards to just the work that we do in young people and the images, this past Saturday, there was a special on CNN. And within the CNN special that was focused on social justice, they actually highlighted the work of one Hood, Pittsburgh native, Jasiri X, in his work. And he talked about some money or foundation money that he had received, but they were really looking at kind of the negative stereotypes that are usually portrayed of Black males on the Pittsburgh media news. And so a lot of times, if that's the only thing that you see, negative images that's feeding you, if you don't engage with people outside of your race, what you begin to take on is that image and perception, and think that the other group only represents that one particular part. And so we have Jayden and we have Cecil. And I'm going to ask this question in regards to Jayden and Cecil, in regards to being a Black male, right? So the stereotypes around Black male students, Black female students, in regards to always considered as being less than academically, but can you speak to how you really work and how you just embody the essence of really dismantling that stereotype in the work that you do? And also, can you also speak to really the honors classes, the AP classes in Pittsburgh Public Schools? It's called the CAS classes, of different things that you're involved in. And your upcoming years, you both chose HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, to attend. And I just wanted to know part of what your decision was in going into that. So it looks like Cecil unmuted first, so we'll go with Cecil and then we'll go with Jayden.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you, Dr. Good, for having me on this panel. But first and foremost, my foundation all started with my mother. And I'm very glad that she was very instrumental in my pursuance of service, education, and faith. So having that at such a young age kind of gave me an understanding of what I should be doing in life, and that's achieving at all costs. And at such a young age, back in elementary school, when I first started school, you know, there wasn't those tough conversations about racism and injustice and inequities. But she made sure that I was prepared enough so when I did face that, then I'll be understanding, but also transparent about what I should be doing and how they can put a barrier in front of me. Well, they do, but I will overcome that. So that's all started with my mother and me starting off at a really pro-Black school, the Urban Academy, back in elementary school. So having that rooted in me from the very beginning is what kind of transcended in middle school and high school at Obama Academy. And at Obama Academy, it's a very, very diverse school. So having many different perspectives from Black to white to Hispanic to Asian, there are many ideas that come around when we're talking about racism, when we're talking about race in the United States of America and beyond. So just not having that narrow-sighted idea of, yes, we are Black, but at this time, Black Lives Matter because we're the ones who are in danger of even being alive or even being able to breathe in this country. So having those types of conversations in a very diverse realm helped me to be who I am. And then to even further our African-American brothers and sisters endeavors, I was the former president of the African-American CAS Executive Committee for the PPS District. And you served as the keynote speaker back in 2019. So just having those roles to put other African-American brothers and sisters on a platform is truly what I deem necessary or worthy as someone who has a voice, who has a platform to bring other brothers and sisters of color into that realm as well. Because there are many brothers and sisters who are talented, who are gifted, who are strong, that just needed a uplift. And that's not what they have in this community or in many communities. So just for me to be able to do that, I'm excited to do that. And for me to be graduating from Obama and then going off to Morehouse College, that's just another stepping stone for me to be surrounded by my fellow Black brothers. But what I didn't understand going into Morehouse College is that Morehouse College is a part of the AUC, the Atlanta University Center. So that includes Morehouse College, Spelman College, and Clark Atlanta University. So yes, I am indulged in the brotherhood of Morehouse College, but I'm indulged in a sisterhood and also a family of sorts with Clark Atlanta University. So having basically 3 schools on one campus, do you know how much we can achieve in this world, in this century, in this year? 2020 is a year of a recollection. It's a year of realizing, of revisioning. And for me not to be on campus this fall, but I'm still optimistic that once we are on campus, we're going to change this world for the better.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing and just your perspective of centering the strong Black males and unity that you'll have at Morehouse, but also of recognizing the sisters too in this work. And so Jay, can you lend your voice to the conversation?
Yes, so we talk about the stereotypes of Black males, and I never really understood that until I got into high school. Most of the students I hung out with were young Black men, and my teachers would often tell me, don't hang with that person, don't associate with them. But my white peers who were just as bad that I would usually surround myself with, my teachers had no feedback on. And I was always curious as to why. And I just came to the conclusion that there was nothing separating them but their races. And we talk about Black education, and we need more Black leadership, as Cecil pointed out. We need more Black teachers so they can be more understanding of Black students.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have one follow-up question before we move on. And just your leadership roles and seeing the lack of representation of Black and Brown students in your AP and Scholars classes, can you just share a little bit about the work that you all did, both of you or Cecil, under the leadership through the African American CAS program, and Jay, in your involvement with that, of really talking to your school district administrators and leaders about looking at how to get more Black and Brown students into the courses, and or the work that you have done with your fellow peers in regards to educating them about using their voice to have access to the courses?
Yes, ma'am. So the key thing about Obama is that it's a international baccalaureate school. So many of the high school students are already in the IB realm, which is the higher level courses at Obama. But in regards to CAS, I had to make sure to go back to the younger people, because many younger children or younger kids don't understand the importance of striving for your best or doing your best. Some individuals have a foundation of, I'm gonna get a C, I'm gonna pass, I'll be just fine. But there's more to you, there's more potential, there's more growth. So by being the president of the AACAS executive committee, but also the student body president of Obama, I had to make sure to go to the classrooms. I had to make sure that I was at the board meetings. I had to make sure that I was traveling to other schools to make sure they are aware of what the resources are available to them, because not many students have access to the resources or are knowledgeable about what is able to further their academic endeavors. And not many people understand that what you do now has impact on your future. So I was very transparent about that. I'm very transparent about that now, especially with my younger sisters, and how one of my sisters, she's now going to high school. Then my youngest sister, she's going to middle school. So education is the passport to the future, for it belongs to those who prepare for it today, as said by Malcolm X. So education is one of the key components that will help to liberate our people now and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And so as we transition on to other panelists, I would just like to say, as we organize, right? So the organization that we do comes from within the schools and also outside of the schools. So if we think about learning as the ecosystem, and so how we collaborate between the schools and families and communities, and how it is to be in a space as a Black and Brown student, but not feeling seen or welcome within that space, and kind of the feelings within that causes certain people to really use their voice, to elevate their voice even more, to make a stance. And so as we transition on, I want to hear from next Samara Pollard, and then also Macy Schrafer. And I would like for you to share from your perspective of ways that you have in which you have done youth organizing and advocacy work from within the school. And so, Samara, I know that you have done some work in regards to the Black Student Union at West Mifflin High School. And then Macy, the work that you have done of being part of one of the co-founders for the Social Justice Club at Avenworth. So Macy, it looks like you unmuted first, so you can share with us.
Yeah, so we had data after Hannah came to me saying that she wanted to create this club that wouldn't just like only say like there are things wrong with this community and that we need to change it, but would actually act on these beliefs and protest and speak up for our beliefs, like how this is wrong with this community. I think I'm really inspired by that, because I would have always just like saying, yes, things are wrong, but I've never really in my lifetime seen them act on it. So it was a great stepping point for that. One of the trickiest parts of being this summit was acting on it. And we were luckily to be offered to host a event called the Big West, where we were able to discuss for the community. And I think that's really important, but organizing some issues. And it's just like to me. unfortunately, the pandemic, it was canceled, but like there's so many more problems that came out of it, like the George Floyd protest, that question bigger now than
Macy, can you hear me? Macy, can you hear me? We're having some difficulty hearing your audio right now. And so we know that you are saying things that's very important that we all want to hear, but it's hard to hear you for right now. So what I'm going to do is ask you to just put your speaker on mute for right now.
yeah.
And to see if you can reconnect to the internet in some way. Macy, can you put your audio on mute? Okay, thank you. And so what I think part of what Macy was describing, I'm going to ask Jada and Hannah, if one of you all would just like to speak to the work that Macy started off describing in regards to your vision or why the Social Justice Club at Avenworth came about, because it seems like that's what she was starting to share out. So if Hannah or Jada would like to lend their voice to that. Thank you, Hannah.
So I went to one of the school board subcommittees called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at Avonworth. And a teacher from Hampton High School came and spoke about how they started a multicultural club and a social justice club. And I thought social justice club is a little bit more fitting for our school district. So I approached one of our teachers at the school and asked him if he would sponsor it. He said yes. So we went forward and we had support from admin. So the club was started in February of 2020. So yeah, I just wanted a club to like act on the social justice issues that are happening nationally, globally, and locally, and just like educate students on it, because anyone can come to social justice club. It's not specified to one specific group of people, which I thought was important, that anyone can come to any meeting.
And so Hannah, can I ask you really quickly, so what do you see as like the primary driving force of the group? Like you would want what to get accomplished?
I would just want more students and families in our district to just be educated and aware of what's happening in the world. And it's like the club is something that like all these issues that we're talking about need to be fixed or talked about and educated. So I think just educating more students and families district-wide is like the goal with this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Samara.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I just want to say that at West Mifflin, I love West Mifflin, but I realized that in my junior year of high school that there needed to be a change at the school. I seen a lot of things, happen, or a lot of students that look like me feel some type of way, and they really had no one to talk to, nowhere to go, to be honest, because there were a lot of, let's say, we never had any Black teachers at West Mifflin. It was only white teachers. So I felt that my senior year was the time to create a Black student union. So my purpose to create, or trying to create, the Black Student Union was so that Black and brown students would have a voice in West Mifflin. So the Black Student Union was aimed to advocate the needs of students while empowering and teaching and exploring the Black experience while promoting diversity and cultural diversity. So like I was saying, many clubs got started, as soon as possible. So when I tried to create the Black Student Union, I would say it was somewhat of a challenge, because I guess the name Black starting with the club, the name Black didn't appeal to many administrators or even students in that school. So it was very hard to get sponsors, as well as teachers, to sponsor that club. So I went through about 5 or 6 teachers and would always get a no, and was told to change it to multicultural student union or all student union, but that wasn't the vision that I wanted. And I also worked with another student in the school, so she's not here, but yeah, it was a challenge. I didn't know the process of going to board meetings or having to write a note 2 weeks in advance to be able to speak at board meetings, or just certain things like that. But I had Dr. Good to call up, and she helped me through the process. So I was trying to start this the beginning of the school year, around September, October, and it actually didn't fall through due to COVID, basically. But we weren't prepared in certain ways because we didn't have a lot of access that the other students had when they tried to create their groups. So I just believe that the name of the club and what I was trying to do, bring Black students together, was somewhat of an issue that a lot of teachers didn't want to happen at that school. But Dr. Good made it her priority to help us try to get this group started. She made sure that we talked to get to the school board, and once we were prepared, they kind of shut down the meeting. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that perspective, Samara. I think that too, it brings into account when we look at and talk about diversifying the teaching workforce, right? And so what that means. And so Samara pointed out that there are other clubs within the school, her school, and it happens at other schools, that as you think about having a faculty leader or a teacher leader or administrator, it's very easy for them to pick out someone to ask them to be the advisor, right? But when you don't have a diverse faculty or diverse staff, how it makes it even harder for Black and Brown students to feel like they're welcome in that space and have access. And so even the background knowledge of knowing how to be there and know how to support your students is very important. And I think that's one of the things that Samara had brought out, within her story. And also for school leaders, for superintendents, as you think about just different policies and wanting the youth to be at the table, to lend their voice, to be able to make a change, how I would say excessive are you making the policies, the practices, the procedures? Are you including all of the audiences to know about how do you go about creating something new? And so I think that for me, that was one of the key takeaways from her story that she was able to share too as well. Cool. All right. So, and being cognizant of the time, and then also looking at the number of panelists that we still have to go to share out, I wanted to know, Dean Kinloch, did you have anything at this point that you wanted to add in?
No, I'm actually gonna bring some things to gather at the very end, but just want to make sure it's 11:03, and so we can just keep it moving. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to read a quote as we transition to hear from the next two students. So we talk about youth organizing, advocacy work that happens within the school, and we had Macy and Samara and Hannah lend their voice to that. Now we want to shift to just youth leaders that have stood up and used their voice to advocate beyond the four walls of the classroom, beyond the four walls of the school building. And in 2016, President Barack Obama gave a commencement speech at Howard University. And in that commencement speech, I'll read, he talked about passion. And so he urged the audience, he said, passion is vital. but you have to have a strategy, right? So once you are marching and protesting and organizing, what is your follow-up to that of being very strategic? And so if we look at movements, it is a roundabout movement that should occur. And so he was urging them that within your passion to also have a strategy. And so I would like next for Lauren and Hannah to really talk about their advocacy work that they do in the community. And so in one of thinking about how do you work with your other peers within your school district, within your high school, to really take that social justice cause and effort to the streets, right? To the people, to gather adults in the community and in the neighborhood and your passion and in your initiative. So Lauren had organized a rally around the time of the death to honor Antoine Rose. And so, Lauren, I would like for you to speak about Antoine Rose, what connected you to him? Why did you feel like you wanted to organize something beyond your school walls and get the community involved? And then Hannah, can you share your perspective too? You shared some about the co-founding of the Social Justice Club at Avenworth, but I know that you have an upcoming event within your community that's happening at the end of the month. So I wanted you to share about your process within that.
So first off, my air conditioner is running, so if you can't hear me that well, I can turn it off, but yeah. Going to a predominantly white school, it just didn't feel like many people really cared that he died. And, you know, when I was at home watching TV and I saw that Mike Rossfeld had just been acquitted, you know, my family's reaction compared to the people at schools, it just like didn't feel right. You know, we were angry. Some of us were crying even. And then I got to school and, you know, people were silent or they were like, you know, still going on with their day. And I just kept thinking like, why doesn't this bother you so much, you know? So I felt that I needed to speak up. So 4 of my friends and I, we decided to, you know, make posters and just try and get the word out. So then we went home that night and, you know, just like shared it all over social media and like texted some more of our friends to branch out that we were gonna organize a walkout. So the next day, we told our teachers about it and then they got the go-ahead from the principal. So we walked down to a field. It was nice because there were a couple cars that, you know, honked or like shouted, you know, like justice for Antoine and stuff like that. Some of the neighbors came out and, you know, like, you know, marched and shouted with us. And yeah, I just felt that push to try and do something because it felt like the death of an innocent Black boy had become so like normalized in our society, and that just didn't sit right with me at all. So yeah.
Thank you.
So at the end of the month, on July 31st, we will be having something called Avenworth Caravan for Change, uniting the community towards a common good. So I think it was the end of June or in the middle of June, North Allegheny High School had their own protest demonstration, and then they had cars drive through school district because they weren't happy with the way that their curriculum was. They were protesting the school district. So I thought that was a really cool idea, but I didn't want to protest school district, so I modified it to fit like an Avenworth school district. So I contacted the student in charge at NA and just kind of I talked to him for about 30 minutes about like what to do, what not to do, and then I reached out to Mr. Warren, our sponsor for Social Justice Club, and then the administration at Avenworth, and they love the idea. So it's just going to be a bunch of students, faculty, administration, alumni, talking about their experiences within the district regarding racism and social justice, to spread awareness and a call to action in the community. I think it's really important that we support this movement that's happening right now. And we made it so that it's very family friendly, so that, you know, parents can bring their kids, young kids, to this, because I know that's a big fear with going to protests and rallies and demonstrations, is the fear of what's going to happen there. And it's also social distancing. People are sitting in their cars and they're going to listen to what people are saying outside, so that they can still maintain those social distancing regulations.
That was great. Thank you for that. Can you give us the name of it again?
Avenworth Caravan for Change, uniting the community towards a common good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Good, I'm really curious, if you don't mind, given what we've heard so far and getting to Jada, I'd love to hear your perspective in this conversation, Jada, because I am aware that you recognize your white privilege, and in recognizing white privilege, you're attempting to use your voice to do what the panelists have talked about so far, uniting people, really thinking about how to support Black Lives Matter, how to actually think about LGBTQIA+ rights. And so I'm curious, can you enter the conversation and talk for a bit just about how you think about this work, how you think about privilege, and what we can learn from what you have to offer?
Yeah, so our school is primarily white, so I think it's important.
Jada, can you turn your video off and see if we can hear you? We're having trouble. Can you turn your video off for a minute?
Talking about these issues and create more life for the oppressed communities, and bring more.
Is it just on my end? But I think we're having trouble hearing Jada. I am so sorry. We would love to have you start again. Can you just turn your video off one more time, Jada, and then try again? Try again. All right, I think we've lost Jada temporarily. So for the sake of time, I'm hoping Jada will join again, but we're gonna keep moving until Jada comes back. And Dr. Good, I'm gonna ask if you could talk with us about Terry and Davonna to get their voices in the conversation as we wait for Jada, in terms of the questions for them.
Thank you. And I believe that Jada was trying to switch to her phone, and then Macy switched to her phone as well. So Macy, we do see you. After we hear from Terry and Davonna, we'll try to bring you back in as well, okay? All right. And so we heard part of the conversation of the advocacy work from our high school students, but now we want to shift to hear the voices and perspective of our graduate students. And so we have Terry Martin. So for 2 years, Terry was a student at Chatham University, and she was going through the teaching preparation program. And Terry enters into this space, I believe, for me, as a professor and working with a lot of school districts, and hearing them say, you know, always asking the question, do you have diverse candidates? Do you have Black and Brown candidates? Can you please send them to us? We're looking to, you know, have more students in our pipeline and to hire more Black and Brown educators. And so, but the question is also back to the school districts and school leaders, what are you doing internally first to prepare to welcome this audience, right? So what work are you doing first to even just welcome and to prepare yourselves and your organization to receive Black and Brown students? And so I'm going to ask Terry, if you can just speak to the perspective of different things that you had to navigate and challenges of going through your teacher preparation program via your practicum and student teaching experiences, but also as we think about diversifying the teaching pipeline, what led you to want to become an educator?
Absolutely. I believe it's still morning, so good morning, everyone. And thank you for having me to come and share my experience and my perspective on this topic. So as Dr. Good mentioned, I am a recent graduate of Chatham University's Master's of Arts in Teaching program. And during my study, as she also mentioned, I've had the pleasure of working with her as her graduate research and teaching assistant, as well as gaining her support through academic advising, and then later on becoming my university supervisor during my student teaching experience. And then at the same time, I worked under Dr. Randy Congleton in the Multicultural Affairs Office, which just recently was renamed the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I truly feel blessed, and in a sense, I feel lucky that I was able to be in a position to learn from, as well as be supported by two very strong-minded, passion-driven, hardworking, and all-around successful Black women. I believe that this has truly helped me to navigate spaces where I felt distressed by whiteness and even in a sense drowning in it, and has kind of kept me in the program to see it through to completion. And I say this with the understanding that most Black and Brown students in a similar path as mine, often do not have or will not have that same level of support. So that brings me to some advice that I have for school administration, and particularly those who seek to host Black and Brown student teachers. And so before I begin with my advice or suggestions, just a little bit of background. I did have 3 placements for student teaching throughout my teacher preparation program. Definitely wasn't at first by choice, but I did not want to settle for an experience less than I felt like I deserved, just because of how passionate I am about serving Black and Brown students. So what brought me into education was coming from the background that I did. So coming from a family that didn't have very much money, from a neighborhood that would be described as, maybe ghetto or dangerous, and, any other form of descriptions in that manner. I see what it's like, the type of quality of life that you have when there is a lack of education, or at least quality education. And so understanding that, it made me want to be representation for Black and Brown students, or serve as a form of representation, and also address some of the inequities in education for Black and Brown students, in a sense, helping them to find their own voice and in turn become their own advocates and become independent learners. So my first piece of advice would be preparation. And I know Dr. Good kind of talked a little bit about that, but the angle that I want to address it from is actually screening their mentor teachers. So I believe that not every great teacher is or will be a great mentor teacher. And that is very much aligned with my first placement. I went into it, feeling like this was the ideal situation. I was in a school that was, the student population was predominantly Black and Brown students, but my cooperating or mentor teacher was a white female, which at first wasn't an issue. When she and I conversed, it was very respectful. She was very welcoming, but then I noticed that over time, her tone became very condescending, and mostly it was in front of the students. And, she always told me that she wanted me to take the lead, but it often felt as if she didn't when she reprimanded students who were kind of just going off of my direction. And she did it immediately after I would give the direction. So it kind of felt like there was this internal battle. And so I didn't really see her as a mentor. So I feel like in order to be a mentor, the teacher has to be open. He or she has to be willing, and they have to have some type of or some level of care about the success, both current and future, of the student teacher whom they are mentoring. Not just concerned with giving a grade or an evaluation. So it has to be more relationship building and mentoring, and in a sense, less monitoring. And then the next piece on the same lines of preparation would be requiring or mandating that all mentor teachers, especially of Black and Brown student teachers, go through some type of anti-racism training workshop or some type of session. And I believe that this is important for every individual, especially all of us who were, in a sense, born, raised, or spend a great amount of time in this country, which we all know was founded and kind of built on, racist ideals and, white supremacy. And so kind of forcing you to be in a space where you not only recognize, but you address those biases, because that's extremely important, because the things that you put onto, your Black or Brown student teacher, either they leave the field or they then in turn reflect those biases on their future students. And then the cycle continues. My next piece of advice would be to create a space where they feel welcomed. So making sure that they not only feel welcome, but that it is a safe space, a space for them to be able to be vulnerable, because we know that in order to learn, there takes a certain level of vulnerability. You have to trust the person that you're learning from, and also feel vulnerable enough to make mistakes. Because I really looked at my student teaching as on-the-job training, right? So a space where I get to take, all of the philosophies and the skills and things that I read about and actually put it into application, under the caring and guidance of a mentor, someone who has already been there and who can kind of guide me towards growth and success. And then also welcoming them into a space where they feel supported. So knowing that if any issues do arise, that it doesn't have to feel like a battle between them and their cooperating or mentor teacher. That's another thing that I noticed when I did decide to voice my concern about the issue. That was, in a sense, the first time that I had conversation with anyone from the administration. So I think that kind of building that support and allowing them to feel like they have someone to confide in, and it's not necessarily anything that will negatively impact the mentor teacher, just more of getting a different perspective and having someone to shed insight on the mentor teacher's perspective, because in a sense, they've known them longer. And lastly, I will say that the cooperating and mentor teachers should definitely be a reflection of the school. So in trying to create or sustain a pipeline for Black and Brown students, cooperating teachers or mentor teachers definitely impact student teachers or prospective candidate teachers' experiences with your school. And so if these are individuals whom you look to hire in the future, you want to make sure that their first line of contact or their first experience with your school is, it's aligned with your school culture, it's appropriate, and also that it's a positive one. Yeah, and that's all I have to share. Thank you.
And that's all very helpful, Terry. And it's clear that you have a lot of experience and that you are ready to engage in this work. You are ready to engage in this work. So thank you for that. And I have the hard job of making sure that the time is not ticking away too quickly. And so we have literally 6 minutes. I want to jump to Davonna. And I want to get your voice in this conversation, Davonna. You and I know each other well, but I will not preface anything. I'm just going to ask you to just come on in and start talking.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dean Kinloch. As you mentioned, we know each other well. I have the privilege of working with you as your graduate research assistant, and also the benefit of working with the Center for Urban Education. I'll just share kind of just thinking about all that I've heard this morning, that happy to be in this group, and I've learned a lot from each of the students so far. I was asked to share a bit about my research. I am particularly interested in Black women educators. I was inspired by the Teachers Race Talk survey that was designed and dispersed through the Center for Urban Education, designed by Drs. Rich Milner, Dr. Delali O'Connor, Lori Delali O'Connor, Dr. Ira Murray, and Dr. Adam Alvarez. So the survey was distributed in 2016 with the intentions of gathering the thoughts, perceptions, and beliefs of teachers with regard to race-related issues such as police violence, preparedness to discuss race-related issues with students in classrooms, and their thoughts about having support from parents and administrators to have these conversations with students. I looked specifically at the responses of Black educators who responded to the Teachers Race Talk survey, and I learned that 100% of them reported that it was important, they believed that it was important to engage in race talk with their students, and that they also believed that race did play a significant role both in the personal lives of their students and in their educational experiences. Inspired by that work, I engaged in semi-structured interviews with Black women teachers in the Baltimore area. And I learned a lot from them as well. One of the things that I sought out to learn was, how do Black women educators utilize race talk for the purpose of educational equity for their students? What I learned from those teachers is that some of them didn't even see themselves as using race talk for those purposes. But what they did share with me is that there were those unintentional moments where they had conversations with students and with their students' parents when it came to learning how to navigate and how to respond to discrimination that students experience in their schools. They went to meetings with them, they advocated on their behalf, and they didn't even consider themselves as social justice advocates or activists in their school. And I thought that was interesting. But what they did tell me is that they did make intentional efforts to using race talk, for one, because they wanted to manage or change the perceptions that others carried about Black students and Black teachers. They also said that they felt responsible for having conversations about race in their classrooms because, and oftentimes similar to what Samara's experience, they were the only Black teacher in their school. And then thirdly, they knew that from their own experience as Black women, Black girls in their own educational experience, that race played a role, and sometimes racism played a traumatic role in their educational experiences. And they knew that that was likely the experience for their students. And they therefore, again, felt it was their responsibility to do something about that. Now, I've taken all that I've learned from, again, the Teachers Race Talk survey, from my own research, and I'm most interested now in 3 core questions that I'm kind of grappling with in my head. One, how might Black educators use more intentional race talk? And by intentional, I mean race talk that is motivated with the intention of creating equitable educational spaces. How might Black teachers use more intentional race talk with their students for the purpose of creating educational, justice-oriented, and anti-racist learning spaces? Another, how can Black educators help students develop their own social justice positionalities, much like many of the high school students that we heard from this morning? And then above all else, most important to me, in what ways might Black educators be encouraged and supported as they persist in white educational spaces that oftentimes deny their very humanity? That's where a lot of my research is sitting now, and I've been very excited and moved by what I've heard this morning. So again, thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you so much, Davonna. That was wonderful. And unfortunately, we have 1 minute left. And in this 1 minute, I am going to ask you, Tyra, Dr. Good, if you have something quick that you might want to say, and then we're going to turn it over to Dr. Rondinelli and Dr. Rocco.
Thank you. Yes, I just have something really quick. I just want to thank all of the panelists. And as we close out and enter with the words of Bell Holtz, I want to exit this space of thinking about how do we exit but continue the work. And so in honoring the late Congressman John Lewis, who really talked about good trouble, I want to just read this, something that I heard from videos of him speaking throughout the weekend. I got in good trouble, necessary trouble. And I said to all of the young people, to all of the children, we are getting into good trouble to set people free. This has gone on way too long and it must stop, and it must stop now. So I just thank you for just sharing your voice, lending your voice, and continuing to do this good work and stay in good trouble. Thank you.
Dr. Good, thank you so much for that. And before we conclude, I must say that Jada and Macy, we will have to do another panel, and we're going to have fewer people on the panel because, Jada, I want to learn from you how you are actually grappling with white privilege and the ways that you are engaging in this work. So how about the promises? There will be another panel with a few of us, and we're just going to listen to you all talk. Same with you, Macy, because I heard a few things coming out that were really powerful, and we're so sorry that we were not able to connect. But look out for an email or a phone call. We're going to actually make something happen so that we can revisit some of these conversations. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues here. And in turning it over to everyone else, I'm going to say thank you all for being a part of this session. I have so many questions, and we're eventually going to hopefully have more time to engage in some conversations. But for now, Barrett, Billy, Greg, if you want to take it away.
At this time, I don't think we want to say goodbye. I think we want to say until the next time. I know that Dr. Kinloch is continuing to work on this social justice series. Dr. Rocco and I are committed to helping her, and the Grable Foundation couldn't be more supportive of these initiatives. And so with this, we say thank you. We are filled with gratitude. Dr. Rocco?
Yeah, I just, Tara, Dr. Good, you're thinking like me. I was thinking of John Lewis, and, a quote that he said that really stuck with me. He said, "Do not get lost in the sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime." I am so encouraged by hearing these young people today because I am with you. I'm not Black, but I'm with you in helping us change this culture that exists in our country, in our world. And your leadership, is really, really important. And as we talked about in the planning, we need to continue this conversation going forward throughout the year, but as John Lewis said, for a lifetime. Greg, would you like to add anything to close?
As someone who tried to listen very closely, I'm full with gratitude to each and every single one of you. At a very basic level, every learner asks, am I safe? Am I loved? Do I belong? And unless a learner can answer yes to those questions, great learning can't happen. And so we all have work to do to make certain that the answers to those questions are emphatic yeses, especially for our Black and brown children, for learners with exceptionalities, for everyone for whom they feel marginalized. And Dr. Kinloch and Dr. Good, we are so grateful to you for your partnership, for the work that you do. And we look forward to the work ahead and more panels and more opportunities to learn from these extraordinary young scholars. So thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Well, see you soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.